Well, a warm good evening to you all, and welcome to the sixth and final webinar in this free webinar series organized by the Center for Professional Development and Lifelong Learning, a unit housed at the University of the West Indies, Cayfield campus right here in Barbados. I'm Sonia Mahan from the UWI, and I will be your moderator for this evening's webinar. The timing of the series and its topics were carefully chosen to be relevant to the times that we are in and to expose you to some of the tools that we are sure would allow you to engage in learning for life. Some of the webinars allowed you to recenter, like our first webinar, which was titled Visioning and Goal Setting for the New Reality, presented by Mrs. Karen Williams Thompson way back a month ago on May 20th. Some allowed you to re-equip to our new normal. And we presented the webinar Leading Effective Virtual Teams by Professor B.J. Punnett on May 27th. While others allowed you to reimagine your professional and personal futures. And we presented two webinars, Auditing Analytics with Dr. Terry Harris and Dr. Amir Michael on June 3rd, and Digital Business just last week with Dr. Gareth Beeston. The webinars also served as a preview and provided you a snapshot of the cutting edge programming available at the Cayfield campus through the Department of Management Studies in particular, with a specific emphasis on what we offer through the Center for Professional Development and Lifelong Learning, which in itself is a mouthful. We affectionately refer to it as CPDLL on the campus. And I'll share some more of what's upcoming for the short courses presented through the CPDLL at the end of today's session. Today's webinar is going to be no different. Presented though in the form of a panel discussion, we will be exploring a topic that is more relevant now than seemingly ever before. We're going to be discussing cybersecurity. This area affects all of us, some at various and multiple levels, whether as individuals, as employers, as employees, as consumers, as business owners, as educators, as students, as citizens, as civil society, as government. The COVID-19 pandemic has catapulted us all, willingly or unwillingly, into a digital environment, into a digital space where the hitherto impossible is now not only possible, but becoming routine. When a new technology becomes normalized, we often have to begin using adjectives to avoid confusion with what used to be the norm. And I'm asking you to remember the days many of us in the environment are not going to be Generation Zers. So remember, or the Zoomers, which are those who were born within the last 15, 20 years. So you will remember the days when telephone meant a communications device attached by a cable to some port. And we did not need to then say, call me on my landline or call me on my mobile or cell phone, because there was only one. When we refer to as mail in those days, we meant, according to Merriam-Webster, materials such as letters and packages sent or carried in a postal system. So today when we talk about mail, we have to differentiate, do we mean, more often than not, we now mean email, which of course is mail, not physical, delivered through the internet. Pre-COVID, when we use the word meeting, we usually equated that with a physical gathering of persons holding a similar agenda. Now in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, and as we get to our new normal and our new realities, when we speak of meeting, we have to differentiate, do we mean an electronic meeting? Do we mean Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Blue Jeans, Google Meet? Interestingly enough, not many of us are on Skype, versus the regular meeting, which would have been the norm for many of us, for most of us, a short 3 months ago at some physical location. And this just shows within a short, in this instance, within a short 3 months, how quickly we can or are expected to adapt to the new norm. So that's what we're going to be exploring this evening. Cybersecurity. What is it? How did we get here? And what are the takeaways that we, as, like I said, individuals or as members of any one of those categories I listed before, what does it mean to us? What do we have to know to survive in this new space? Before we get started though, let's establish some protocols for this evening's webinar. For the duration, you're going to ask when you came in, your video would have been disabled and your microphone muted. Because of the number of participants that we are anticipating this evening, I'm going to ask you to please keep your video disabled and to please keep your mic muted. It will be an interactive session. You will be allowed to ask and engage with us, but we're going to ask you to do that through the chat icon on your Zoom toolbar. Should you be experiencing difficulties, please do let us know through the chat facility as well. And to get the best viewing experience, I'm asking you to set your Zoom settings to speaker view, and that way you'll see the panel at all times. So as we turn our attention to our esteemed panelists for today, we're going to have 3 panelists with us, and I'm just going to give you a brief bio on each. George Thomas, who holds a BSc in Computer Science, MSEE in Electrical Engineering, is currently the Deputy CIO at CIBC First Caribbean. George is an entrepreneurial and pioneering banking technologist with over 20 years of executive level experience in identifying, qualifying, and building consensus for and implementing enabling secure technologies and enterprise systems that facilitate business processes and strategic objectives. A mouthful to know that he's well qualified to be here this evening. A powerful blend of product and technology vision, which results in consistent development of business strategies supported by cost-effective, high-performance technology solutions. A unique combination of product, security, and IT strategy delivery on a global level with proven go-to-market mobile, money, and wallet solutions delivered across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. He's also a proven leader in network infrastructure, solution architecture design, telecommunication strategies, and software development. Notwithstanding all of that, he's also capable in developing the full project lifecycle management, client-vendor relationship management, and financial and operational management, and has a track record in investor and stakeholder fundraising, managing M&A due diligence, and integrations in addition to reorganizing and process improvement initiatives. So, as a solid leader and business partner that is sought out to advise on many of the key developments in online payment and mobile technologies that change rapidly, he's being continually redefined to meet the demands of both financial institutions and the customers that he serves. Patricia Rowe Seale also has her background in computer science and mathematics with an MSc in information systems and a myriad of other professional qualifications, including ACA, CIA, CISA, CISSP, CRMA, and CRISC. She's the Director of Enterprise Security, Fraud, and Supplier Risk Management at CIBC First Caribbean, with over 15 years progressive experience in internal auditing, technology, banking operations, and change management. As a member of the technology and operations management team, Patricia is tasked with enhancing existing frameworks and practices for the management of information security, vendor security governance, and fraud management. She's also a volunteer instructor with the Institute of Internal Auditors and facilitates their cybersecurity auditing and fundamentals of IT auditing seminars globally. In addition, she is a member of the Internal Auditors Association's Global Institute Relations Committee and the CIA exam, and I smile at the acronym, at the CIA Examination Review Committee. And Neil, last but not least, also CISSP certified, is a Director of End User Technology, Communications, and Support Services also at CIBC First Caribbean International Bank. An experienced technologist with demonstrated skills and knowledge in information security and business continuity management, he's a recognized CISSP instructor. Neil has provided leadership and direction to the IT function of an international financial services company and has ongoing relationships with us here at the Cathedral campus, as does the other two panelists that are going to be here today. So without much further ado, let's get straight to the panel. And I'm going to ask each of the panelists to just give us some opening remarks. Patricia, we're going to start with you. So over to you.
Thank you, Sonia. Good evening to everyone. Now, first, I will start by explaining what is cybersecurity, sort of get into a definition of cybersecurity so that we're all on the same playing field as it relates to cybersecurity, and so that we would understand what we're talking about. Now, there are a number of definitions for cybersecurity, and the definitions that I like to reference are is the ability to protect or defend from the use of cyberspace from cyber attacks. That definition comes from Nist. There's also a definition that I like, and it says cybersecurity consists of technologies, processes, and controls designed to protect systems, network, program, devices, and data from cyber attacks. And it went on to say that effective cybersecurity reduces the risk of cyber attacks and protects against unauthorized exploitation of systems, network, and technologies. And one of the things that I like to emphasize is that cybersecurity is not the responsibility of technology. Cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. Every single person within an organization has a responsibility for cybersecurity. And even individuals, even if you're not an individual who's working somewhere, you might be temporarily not working or whatever, you have a responsibility for cybersecurity for yourself, because most of us, I can't think of very many people who don't have smartphones, who are not going online doing some sort of transaction. And so in this case, you can see that cybersecurity is really everybody's responsibility, and is a shared responsibility across the board. Now, what are some of the risks that cybersecurity seeks to mitigate? Now, there are a number of risks. There's financial loss. There's disruption to or damage to systems. As a company, you can have a disruption or damage to your reputation. As an individual, somebody could damage your reputation by posting or printing something about you that is not accurate or a little bit compromising. And so that is the financial risk, disruption or damage to your reputation. And how does these risks manifest themselves? Well, you can have a deliberate unauthorized breach of security, where somebody deliberately breach your system, and so they have access to your information and sensitive and personal information, or they can have access to your systems and they can use your systems for their own purposes. So you later on, when Neil gets in to speak about cybercrime, sorry, he would talk about he would spend a little bit of time on hijack mining, where people hijack people's systems to use it for data mining for Bitcoins. You can have an accidental breach. And surprisingly, a lot of breaches are accidental or unintentional, because you might have an individual who does something not understanding the security ramifications. And so you have a breach, but it wasn't a deliberate act. It was just really an error. And you can have breaches that are a result of what I call poor system hygiene. So persons not changing their passwords as frequently as they should, or systems that don't have passwords, systems that aren't patched. So, the basic hygiene around systems are not there. And so this could lead to a risk in itself. And one of the other issues that we can have from a cybersecurity risk, is unavailability of systems. So your system can become unavailable. And if you're a bank, if you are a retail store and your systems aren't available, it would have an impact on your ability to conduct your business. Even if you think of a hospital, and if in the hospital the systems aren't available for whatever reason, that not only have an impact in terms of the doctors and nurses being able to do the work, but it can have a significant impact on the patients who are relying on the systems in order for them to get the treatment. So that is a little bit in a nutshell about the sort of risk that we're looking at from a cybersecurity perspective and the risk that we're trying to mitigate. Now, we have to do something. What do we do? I think we would all need to have a cybersecurity program. So how do you develop a cybersecurity program? What is involved in a cybersecurity program? Now, a cybersecurity program from a business perspective, it has to be enterprise-wide. It has to be systematic and repeatable, and it must be documented, because if it's in one person's head and that person happens to leave the organization, then you're back to square one. And it is enterprise-wide because every single part of the organization has computers. It's not only in technology that they're computers, and so it has to be enterprise-wide, and it must be systematic. So it must be a process that one can follow. There's a step 1, there's a step 2, there's a step 3. So what are some of the things that we tend to look for in a cybersecurity program? Well, you have to have some level of governance. Who's going to manage this? What are the principles? What are the standards that you're going to use? So one would expect to see some statements around that. And risk management. Why is risk management important? Risk management is important from the perspective that not all risks are equal. Some risks are high, some risks are low, and some are in between. And if you apply the same level of protection to all your risk, you're going to end up in one or two positions. You're going to be either overprotected, so you're spending lots of money on things that you need not to spend money on, or you're going to be underprotected. You're not spending enough money on those most important things. So you have to do a risk assessment of your environment, understand where your high risks lie, and then focus most of your money and your time and your energy on really addressing your high risk and your medium risk. And your low risk, if they are within your risk appetite, then you can just leave them alone. Coupled with a risk management framework and a process around that, one would have to have standard policies and guidelines and controls to make sure that you are addressing what one needs to address. Now, there are a number, if you're wondering, how do I do that? There are a number of frameworks and standards out there that one can implement. There's a Nist standard for cybersecurity, the cybersecurity framework authored by the Nist company. Then there is the Center for Internet Security. They have a list of 20 controls that if you were to implement those controls within your environment, you would be in a pretty good position. Then you have the ISO 2700 standard. So there are a number of frameworks that one can adopt and follow. You would need to look at it carefully to understand where your business is at and which framework more suits your business. But like the Nist framework, that tends to be a framework that focuses on governance and management. So it helps you to set up your process, help you to understand what needs to be there, how you do it. And then the CIS controls, which is the Center for Internet Security Controls, that tend to be more tactical, and that would allow you to actually implement stuff. So you've decided on a framework and you've implemented your framework. How do you know that your framework is working? How do you know that you're working, in accordance with that framework? So an effective cybersecurity program would have to have some process for monitoring and measuring. How do you monitor what you're doing? How do you monitor all the controls that you've put in place for your cybersecurity framework? You have to have some means of monitoring that. And then you have to measure your cybersecurity posture. How well are you stacking up? Are you in a good position, or are you not a good position? So that is from your measuring. And the measurement not only is that how you stack up, but how mature you are in your process, because you may have really good processes, but in terms of how well they've been implemented and embedded within your organization, it may not be so mature. So you want to measure that maturity of how well you've embedded those policies and those procedures and those practices. You should also develop a series of what we call key risk indicators, so KRIs, and key performance indicators, KPIs, and these help you to report to senior management. It also helps you to understand where you are, how things are going. That's part of your management reporting, part of your measurement activities. there's one thing that is so very important. And remember, I said at the beginning that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. One thing that is very important in any cybersecurity program is training and awareness. And training and awareness is critical because cybersecurity, I like to say, it is a weakest link in the chain. So the weakest link is what causes the problem. If you have a chain, that's the one that breaks. In cybersecurity, it's always the weakest link that is exploited by cyber actors. And that weakest link, 90% of the time, happens to be people. And if people aren't trained, if they aren't aware of the threats to their environment, if they aren't aware of what can happen, they might innocently click on the link. They might innocently give away information that they shouldn't have, and that will then allow a cyber actor or criminal, if you want to call them that, to gain access to the environment. And training and awareness has to be continuous. Because the cyber threats that are there, they change every day. They new exploits every day, and we're always running behind them. We're not equal with them. We're not in front of them. We are running behind the cyber criminals. And so for that reason, we have to have constant training and awareness multiple times a year. And one method that I like for as part of training and awareness is what we call phishing simulation. So, people get phishing emails and they click on the link and they put in they might put in the credit card information or whatever, and then somebody uses their credit card for purchases, and then they're left with a big bill if they can't prove that it's not them who did the transaction. So we like to do what I call phishing simulation. So you yourself will develop a phishing email and you send it across your organization, and persons click on it, and the persons who click on it, then you send them to a particular page that offers them some level of additional training so that they can understand, well, I just click on this link. Here are the features in this link that I can look for in another such information, another such link if it were to come my way. And so you're constantly training and educating your staff, educating yourself, so that you're aware of what the exploits are out there. One thing I would like to add to in terms of what is good from what constitutes, one of the components of a good cybersecurity program is insurance. One has to have insurance. Every business now, I think, should have some measure of cybersecurity insurance. It is like, not many of us would think of getting our cars and driving it without adequate insurance for cars. And so similarly, you have to have cybersecurity insurance. And cybersecurity insurance is available in the market. You have to speak with brokers to understand what it is out there. But it's an advisable thing for cybersecurity insurance to have that, and that will really put a nice little bow, as I would say, on your cybersecurity program. Yeah. Now, what are the benefits of having a good cybersecurity program? Well, first off, you would enhance your cybersecurity risk posture. And by that, I mean, you'll be able to sleep better at night. You have a better understanding as to what are your possible exposures. And you would know that if something were to happen, you can quickly prevent it, you can quickly detect it and deal with it. You would reduce the likelihood, of a security breach. If your business is a business that has that is very customer facing, customers' confidence and their experience with you would improve once you have a good cybersecurity program, because they're not going to be having numerous instances where their accounts have errors or their accounts have been taken over by cyber criminals. If you have a good program, it's going to give that balance between customer experience and customer irritants, because if customers have to do many things before they can have a transaction with you, they probably will get a little bit irritated. So your good program will have that right balance between protection and customer experience. You will reduce your financial losses and costs, because if you have if you have a good cybersecurity program, your fraud losses will be manageable. You're not going to be able to eliminate them, but they will be manageable. your regulatory fines, if you are in an industry that's highly regulated, you will reduce the possibility of exposure to regulatory fines and penalties. And you would reduce the possibility of breach recovery costs. A recent article I saw indicated that the breach recovery cost for every record that was lost, the recovery cost for a record was in the tune of like $300 to $400 US. If the recovery cost for a record is $300 to $400 US, and when you look at breaches that are happening across the world, you're seeing millions of records are being breached. Just imagine as a company, if you had, couple thousand, 10,000 of your records were lost or breached as a result of a cyber attack, and you have a $300 to $400 US recovery cost, you can see that it can really be crippling. And then you can understand why insurance is so necessary. Having a good one of the benefits of having also a good, effective cybersecurity program is that it allows you to continue your business. I know many of us on the call may have heard of ransomware, and with ransomware, persons are not only breached, but their data is encrypted, and the encryption key is held by the criminal. Well, I shouldn't probably say criminal, it's held by the cyber actor. You have to pay them a ransom to get back that encryption key to decrypt your data so that you can continue business. If you have a good cybersecurity program, chances are, whilst that person might get into your environment, you'll be able to detect that they're in your environment and stop them from doing anything. Or if they were able to get into your environment and was able to encrypt your data, you would have had a very good backup that allows you to continue your business as if it had never happened. So these things sound very simple, but they can be some challenges around how we do that. So those were just the benefits. I mean, I can talk on cybersecurity for the entire day, but we only have a couple hours on this call, and we have two other persons who would who have as equally exciting information as I have to share with you. So I will stop there for now, and maybe in the question and answer session, you might have some questions. So Sonia, I think I will stop there.
Thanks so much, Patricia. I was just about to signal that we're going to stop you there, so you came in at the right time so that we could get on with some of the other remarks, because I'm sure there are going to be some questions. I already have a couple sent to me privately and in the chat forum that we're going to get to as well. Neil, you're up. Your opening remarks, I'm going to give you 10 minutes, so I'm going to give you a countdown or a signal just as you are approaching that 10-minute mark.
So I don't think you need a 10-minute mark for me, because after everything that Pat said, I don't think there's anything left to say. That was cybersecurity in a nutshell, basically. So my task here this afternoon is really to focus in on cybercrime, and I'll begin my my spiel by making a statement. Humans are very trusting, even when they don't have to be. So in the stats on cybersecurity, they say a hack happens every 39 seconds. Literally, hackers steal 75 customer records. Pat was talking about them every single second. 66% of all businesses, after being hacked, are not confident they can recover. And in the meantime, software is eating up the world. Fintech is driving financial services to become 100% digital. The trend was accelerated recently with COVID. And as payments and lending and capital markets increasingly rely on digital technology and automation, cyber risks to consumers and payments are consistently increasing. I'm sure anybody that knows about cybersecurity knows about the Equifax breach in the US. And that exposed nearly 150 million people's records. Understanding that the US population is 300 million. So that's literally half of the entire US population. But this is just the beginning. Cybercrime is just becoming more sophisticated, more widespread, and affecting more people and businesses. The economic damage for cybercrime is expected to exceed $6 trillion by 2021, making it making it larger, a more larger illicit business than selling drugs, and that's the actual annual number. So to put it into context, in 2017, OPEC sold $500 billion in oil. This means that cyber criminals will destroy 12 times the value of OPEC's annual oil export revenue. Now that's a staggering figure. And that's the economic situation in 1 year. Now, some people might argue with my stats. Other institutions have different stats, but the moral of the story is the stats tell a story. It's not the actual number, it's that it's happening. So who are the targets? You, businesses, nonprofits, critical infrastructure, government, militaries, countries. And who are these people and how do they function? So we have the hacktivists. These guys are socially or politically motivated. Everybody remembers Julian Assange. He had a nice run there with WikiLeaks. And then we have Anonymous. And for those who don't know who Anonymous are, they are basically a decentralized international activist group who go after every and anybody that they want to, primarily governments, and surprisingly, the Church of Scientology. I don't know what that one is all about. But anyway, then we have the activists. So we know the last couple of weeks, we've seen the whole Black Lives Matter movement come to fore. And then you see persons who don't really agree with that decision. And they've been hacking the ACLU, the NAACP. They hack the police, the fire departments, the military. And I'll give you a quick story here when we talk about this one. A few years ago, our police force was hacked. We saw some skull and crossbones flying on their website. And one of my friends from the ISSA called the police force and said, "Hey, you guys, your website is being hacked." Then the funny response from the policeman on the other line was, "Can you give me your personal information?" Because the policeman thought that he was the person that was actually hacking the website and just called it to brag. So, you know, the activists are out there. Who else do we have? We have the script kiddies. So these guys aren't really coders. They just buy some code and put in the parameters and press the button and off they go. And I think we've developed a lot of them during COVID because I've never seen so much free IT training in the last couple of weeks as I've seen in my life. So I'm sure we're gonna have a lot more of them. What else do we have? We have the bots and the zombies, and they go as far back as the 2000. Everybody remembers Mafia Boy with eBay and Yahoo. I don't know if Yahoo still exists, but then we have Mariposa. And Mariposa, until it was dismantled in December 2009, consisted of 1 million individual zombie computers. 1 million. And up to 12 million unique IP addresses. So what else is going on out there? From an internal threat and state actors perspective, Pat spoke about it. You can have your disgruntled employees. And then you can have employees sent to your company just to commit espionage. Those are real things. In the state actor realm, we have a couple of countries that have been very prominent recently: North Korea, China, Russia. And I won't say anything on the US elections, but we know that everybody knows what's going on out there. Last week alone, it was announced that North Korea had a 7,000 member cyber army. That was the number that was announced last week. And for North Korea, it said that their cyber army is more effective than nuclear weapons. they gained $2 billion while hacking. And I'll quote a report from the UN. So this report says the country's cybersecurity agency, the center has said the attackers may use COVID-19 as a bait to steal personal and financial information. And this is what they use to trick people into giving them stuff in this start of time, right? We all remember Sony in 2014, what hit them. Last week again, or this week I think it was announced in India about the potential hack that is coming about the COVID scam, right? What else is going on? Again, this week, the Australian Prime Minister, Scott Morris, came out and said Australia was hacked. He never actually announced who did it, but he did say that a lot of essential services and businesses were actually touched, right? But he declined to actually name a person or a state actor. And he said he was doing this to make sure that the country puts themselves on guard. So then there's Russia and the US elections. Full stop. I'll leave that one there. So what else are they doing? The list is endless. Phishing, Pat talked about that one. Man in the middle, denial of service, sniffing, ransomware, child pornography, credit card fraud, malware. We all know about the famous Trojan horses. And in some of our favorite places to troll, those of us who visit the dark web, you can go to Larry's Imperium of Wonder, and you can actually find some credit cards if you want to, or somebody's identity that you can take over. And that's just for the cost of a few Bitcoin. And they're selling IDs, credit cards, everything. They're selling ransomware, all sorts of things on the dark web. So what's the impact to you? As an individual, not a story. A couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine called me and said, Neil, I'm in trouble. My computer has ransomware. And I said to him, yep, you're in trouble. But we have our whole lives on our PCs, our notes, our schoolwork, our business accounting, the photos that we downloaded from the vacation. Everything is on that computer. And that's just the individual. Cards, fraud. I'll give you another story because I seem to be in a lot of situations. A year ago, I took a flight from Barbados. I spent literally 2 hours in Miami airport and landed in Cayman. The next morning, I went into the office, and as soon as I got in the office, I got a call from our card center saying, Neil, where are you? I said, I'm in Cayman, where I'm supposed to be. And the officer on the other line said, but Neil, I see your card in California at the mall shopping. And I was like, no, that's not me. You need to stop me from shopping in California. I literally spent 2 hours in the Miami airport. And that is the only possible place that I could have been targeted with my credit card. What about companies? Brand and reputation.
1 more minute, Neil.
Brand and reputation, customer loss. And that's a big one, right? Nobody wants to sort of deal with you after you've leaked their information to everybody on the internet, or other people have your information. And then scrutiny from your business partners, because you become sort of blacklisted. Like, do I really want to deal with this person? What does that bring? Revenue loss. So I think I've touched a little bit about cybercrime. As Pat said, these topics can let you talk forever and ever, but I'll save a few more seconds and give them to George.
Thanks so much, Neil. As you can see, our panelists are extremely passionate. Both Pat and Neil has demonstrated that, and now it's over to George. George, you're
Thank you very much, Sonia. You see, my other two friends know my propensity to be loquacious. That's why they put me last, so you can sanction and censor me and keep me in a small box, but I will not be contained. Anyway, my focus today is on customer experience, right? So Pat, just to summarize, Pat spoke on the science and the fine art of cybersecurity, how it's managed, maintained, and the different components of it. Neil spoke to the threats and how they emerge and gave some practical examples. I want to speak now from a business perspective and focus on the customer experience. And when I say customer, I mean, we are all customers in some form or fashion, but we can break ourselves into 3 general groups, let us say: persons, businesses, and government, right? Legislators, regulators, etc. And the root cause of a lot of what Neil spoke to and Pat spoke to is awareness. I remember once upon a time, hackers were revered like folk heroes, right? And Neil mentioned quite a few of them, down to Larry's Emporium, Anonymous and so on. But back in the day, in my time, it was Kevin Mitnick, and everybody admired him, and he stole millions of dollars. But you see, the human psyche is very analog, physical-based oriented, right? We see it, we understand it, we touch it, we feel it. So we protect ourselves very well in the physical world. But the virtual world is still very much conceptual and very much playful for many of us. Hence, we go on social media and we express ourselves freely and fully. But I can tell you, if I was a hacker, I would study people and understand exactly who you are, what you are, and your behaviors. And that's coming, with AI and machine learning. The machine will learn you and figure out how to be where how to get around you, right? Based on your psych profile and your behaviors. So for me, I want to really, in this session and in our future sessions, really to speak about awareness. As a user of computer technology, as you enter the virtual space, as you enter the cyberspace, you must protect yourself. You must take the same precautions that you take in the real world. You do not park your car somewhere unknown and leave it unlocked. Nobody runs down the street naked, right? So going online without virus protection is the same thing, right? You're going to be defaced or defiled in some form or fashion. You'll be separated from your identity, your money, and so forth. We do not, even the best of us, do not, when we install internet for the first time, do we take the time to change the password, the SSID, all those basic things? And if my job is to separate you from your identity or your money, I am going to have a cookbook, a checklist of common passwords, common SSIDs, everything. And as I try to hack you, it's not a genius thing. It is just a probability thing. There's a fixed set of passwords that are used out in the world. Lots of them come with the base equipment. So that's what the hackers do. It's mostly a social game more than a computer genius game to hack people. So we need that level of awareness. A lot of times businesses and some governments do not take cybersecurity seriously enough. They do not see it because, and I said in the previous talk, you're not conjuring up ideas of someone coming in with an automatic weapon and laying waste or whatever. But so it isn't as real. So the precautions, the extra investment to secure your business is not done. The level of vigilance that you would spend in putting burglar bars on your house, alarm systems, et cetera, you do not translate that thinking into the cyber world. So many of us are sitting ducks on low-hanging fruit for bad actors, and some not so bad actors. Some people just hack for the fun of it, right? They just want to see that it can be done. But in doing that, your privacy You know, when we have our smart TVs, right? It's possible now for somebody to watch you and observe your most private moments if you are not taking the necessary precautions. And I mean, the three of us, we're the purveyors of internet banking. But if you do not have the virus protection, you're not using VPNs and all that kind of stuff, if you're not sufficiently aware and you're just logging on anywhere, public computers, where have it, it's only a matter of time. I mean, if someone can get access to Neil's card, and Neil is probably one of the most paranoid, no offense, Neil, you know, but seriously, that's his job. He's a cybersecurity guy, right? If he can have his credit card used in California, it can happen to anybody. But the Neils of the world aren't the real target because hackers don't want to work hard. They're going to go for the lowest common denominator, which is the average person that is not aware. So I want to say this for persons, and especially when I say persons, I also mean nano and micro businesses, because based on where our economy is, based on everything that's happening, you know, many of us society are becoming small business owners, nano business owners, and ultimately, because of COVID, you're going to do a lot of business online. A lot of my friends are selling more online than they're selling through their brick and mortars. So what that means is not the security that you implement as a small business owner isn't the security that First Caribbean or First Citizen, any of the banks or the government itself or KFL, UE will implement, but it is a basic awareness of the controls that you can avail yourself of, the potential threats, and what you must do as an individual to secure your assets in the virtual world and your family and your privacy. So that's it for me.
Well, thank you much, George, and what an introduction. And is at this point, even before we get on, I'm going to say, as I said earlier, what we did in the webinars was provide a snapshot of some of the programming here at Cave Hill. And we do have a course coming up in cybersecurity. I'll give you some more details at the end of the webinar, but the whole series gave you an insight into some of the programming that we are having here at the campus. And now I do have some questions for the panel. So deep breath, because they've been coming fast and furious at me, both in the chat, some privately as well. So I'm going to start with one that came at me privately. And George, let me send the first one to you. You talked about individuals and our responsibility as individuals to protect ourselves. So what should we do to protect ourselves from potential cybercrime?
So one of the first, first thing, as I said before, is awareness. Be aware. So just as we follow the news on what is happening, so that something tragic happened yesterday or the day before, we're aware of these physical things. Keep aware of what's happening in the cyber world. Your assets, make sure that you have anti-malware protection, the McAfee's, the Nortons, what have you, on all of your devices, including your phones, because the phone is becoming the laptop, right? I mean, just realistically speaking, if you compare, for all of us on this session, this webinar, that have computers and phones, I'll bet you we spend more time on our smartphones, not talking, but doing computer type stuff on the laptop. So make sure that all of your compute assets are secured. Be very aware of the setting of your passwords. Do not use things like birth date and your firstborn's name and all that kind of, your middle names and so on, or even particular dates. Put something that is reasonably difficult, but do not write it down. Invest in password vaults. There's software where you can store your passwords. So if you have 5, 6, 7, 8 passwords, there may be one password, a PIN that you will remember that you can put on your phone, but the rest of them, you'll have them in a password vault. So those are some of the basic things. Invest in a VPN. So when you're doing your banking transactions at home, go on the VPN so that it's more difficult. There's an encrypted tunnel between yourself and your financial institution. Watch your kids. Look at your kids' interactions online. Until your kids reach adulthood, really and truly, there shouldn't be really any privacy for them because they are cyber stalkers, right? So you need to be able to see what they're doing on Instagram, on Facebook, if kids use Facebook these days, and whatever social media may be access to them. You must keep an eye out. Kids are vulnerable, impressionable, as much as when they become teenagers, they think they're grown, but they haven't seen the world yet. So we have to protect them by just like we watch them in the real world and give them curfews and so on and so forth. We have to do the same in the virtual world. And the other thing is device hygiene. You know, it's very easy. You see something coming down from Apple or Android or WhatsApp, an update, and it's very easy to ignore it, right? But a lot of times those updates are packed with fixes for vulnerabilities. Accept them, right? And also be very aware of when something happens to you, the path of recourse you have. And so if it's credit cards, you know the numbers, you're aware that the numbers on the card itself. If you're having a problem with any of your assets, you have a certified, trusted computer person that can help you recover. That person called Neil, best person to call to recover from ransomware, right? So you need to be very aware, just like we know to call the police or go to the doctor or what have you right now. Know who you're gonna call, right? To sort you out when you get infiltrated, because each one of us is going to get infiltrated at some point in time. And lastly, not lastly, but this is the last one I'm going to put out there. Phishing. Phishing is a big thing, right? Be very, very aware of these emails that come in, seemingly to be from a trusted provider. Look at the domain, look at what it's saying, look at for spelling errors. Be very vigilant of emails that come to you soliciting, requesting you to do some act, especially if it has to do with giving up passwords or performing something that releases some personal information. And if something looks too good to be true, it is too good to be true. So, you know, life is not easy, and anytime something seems to be coming too easy, then it's a challenge. Last thing, really this is the last thing, and it's something that Pat and Neil are very familiar with. There are people out there that, the fishers, there's a whole industry called the mule industry, where the fishers recruit people, promising them stay-at-home jobs, and then next thing you know, person is responsible for receiving money in their bank account and exiting it from an ATM machine, and they're the ones that get caught. But you know, the industry is such that they keep switching and switching and switching and switching, right? Pat, Neil, and myself were observing, we receive intel reports every day. We were observing a similar case. So if something is too good to be true, stay at home and earn $2,500 US a week, that is funny. Must have bank account or something. You know what I mean? Those kinds of things. And today, I know that there's some very legitimate programs in FX trading and so on. I know personally several people have made quite a bit of money, but do your due diligence before you get into anything like that, because you got to make sure it's legit. Make sure you can talk to people who have done it and who've done it successfully, people that that are trustworthy. So that'll be my response to that question.
So I just want to jump in here after George's long list and add a couple of things. As an individual, you gotta stop and think before you click. Simple, right? Shameless plug for First Caribbean. You have to make sure that when you have credit cards, you do have transaction monitoring, right? Make sure you know what your credit card is doing at all times, right? And lastly, back up. That's it.
Neil, I was going to throw this one at you that came in from the chat. Credit card is now chip and pin, probably an FCID credit card. Probably, I'm just saying, are these safer when compared to the swiped credit card, the older credit cards?
So yes, Sonia, significantly, right? Because the Mike Stripe used to hold the information that you had, right? And now that we've upgraded to chip and pin, it's now in a secure chip. You could have probably taken the right tool and get the information off the MagStripe card without any pain and suffering. But yes, the chip and pin definitely is the way to go, whichever financial institution you belong to.
Okay, and I have one for the entire panel. And from your interaction with businesses, how prevalent is the practice of businesses hiring hackers, professional hackers, to assess their vulnerabilities as a defense tool? Does that happen in the Caribbean with businesses?
So I'd say locally, we don't really know hackers per se, but I think it is a norm in North America and in the rest of the world, right? And that is actually how people get their reputation and get careers, right? You go after something really big, usually after the trial, the FBI usually hires you or the CIA or somebody like that, right? In our neck of the woods, we're yet to see that person declare themselves, but I'll let Pat and George jump in.
Oh, my response to that would be it's not a standard practice to go and hire a hacker. However, most organizations have a routine of vulnerability testing. Some people do it monthly, some people do it bi-monthly, quarterly, what have you, as well as a regime around penetration testing and a vulnerability testing program coupled with a penetration testing program will sort of simulate the activities that will be performed by a hacker. So it doesn't quite give you the same outcome as a hacker would, but it is a close enough approximation to that. Occasionally, some organizations run what they call red team exercises. So this is an exercise where you would hire a professional company. You have in the accounting world, you have the big four accounting firms. You will hire one of those big four firms in information security world, and they will do an exercise that would mimic a hacker trying to penetrate your environment. And we tend to call it a red team exercise. So it's not you go and hire a hacker, but you do a number of different activities and different number of programs that will simulate the activities that hackers would normally simulate, would normally try if they were trying to get into your organization.
Yeah, and the service providers will typically have an ethical hacking department. So that is as close to retaining hackers in this part of the world as we'll get. I also think, as Neil alluded to, in North America and in Europe, the hackers used to be employed. I think that as we mature, you're going to see less and less of that, and more the formal way, because there was a time when, I don't know if the laws, especially like in the time of Kevin Mitnick, he did time in prison, but now he's a top security advisor, right? Information security. Right, I think you're going to see that is not the career path that you want to take, because you could probably find yourself locked away for a long time, because the laws are now more aligned with recognizing cybercrime as real hardcore criminal activity. So, yeah. And the Caribbean, we have not seen that. We have not been, as Neil said, identifying the persons. We've gone the more formal route of engaging the companies that provide ethical hacking services.
Okay, and that's a great segue into our next question. Are there specific cybersecurity laws or regulations in Barbados, or indeed in the region? And I'm throwing that out again to any of you.
So Barbados has the Computer Misuse Act, and it recently also, I think, proclaimed the Data Protection Act. So those are the two pieces of legislation that we utilize. And while it doesn't speak formally to cybersecurity, because of how broad it's been written, you may get caught if you do the wrong thing because of the broadness of the law. You may be prosecuted if you get caught because of the broadness of the law, because it's not very detailed and very specific, as in stick, pin in, and burst balloon. It's like, what happens if you do something wrong, right? So those are the two that we have here.
And just to add to Neil, across the region, there are a number of countries in the region that have legislation as well. You know, Cayman has something, Jamaica, Trinidad has something, the Bahamas have something, Turks and Caicos Islands, and the Dutch Caribbean probably has the most stringent ones. Like, by the Dutch Caribbean, I mean Aruba, St. Martin, Curacao. So there are a number of pieces of legislation in the region that really speaks to as computer misuse activities. Some of them specifically say cybercrime, and then others are couched in the terms of data protection.
Okay. George, you would have spoken about, you mentioned the phrase, and for most of our businesses are nano, micro, or small when we start doing the comparisons that the World Bank would have. Are there any particular issues, just that you spoke about individuals having to take responsibility? What are some tips that we would give specifically to our businesses? Nano, small, micro, small, those kinds of businesses.
So the
catapulted into this space.
Yes, I think the small business, nano and small business, like individual entrepreneurs behave like persons. I think behaviorally, where we are now, you will find individuals who are selling a service or something. For example, I have a neighbor down the road that plants 6-week crops, right? And he's selling, and he started out, maybe I could sell these online, you know. So you start seeing that kind of behavior. But I would put the tiny businesses in the same category as persons, and therefore the same kinds of protections, because they do not have the money, the investment to hire an ethical hacking team, you know what I mean? But the scale of business is contained enough. The amount of transactionality is contained enough that the same things that apply to an individual, the same kind of vigilance around malware and VPNs and checking the phishing and that, you know, watching the emails and so on, would apply to those smaller businesses. Now, when you get to medium-sized businesses where you have a number of, not just a sole proprietor, but a number of persons, right? 10, 20, 50, then you start looking at a slightly different, more formulate, more systematic approach along the lines of what Neil and Pat would have spoken to, in terms of, one, the first thing I think is stakeholder education. Because for a long time, you'll find in businesses, the top level persons did not give enough time and attention to the threats of cybersecurity, right? Not enough was invested. So stakeholder education, awareness, and then adopting some kind of framework. Pat mentioned Nist, which is really becoming kind of, I would say, a de facto standard. It emerged in the US as certain best practices across corporations. And it's the kind of thing where it's flexible enough where you can kind of pick and choose to fit your circumstance. I let Pat speak or Neil speak in more detail about that. But then, so that's the second thing, education, and then adopting a risk-based decision-making framework like a Nist, which would then push you into having regular assessments, audits, reviews, and so you're able to quantify what are your risks, where do you have exposures, how do you deal with those exposures, right? Draw the analogy again, in the physical world, you're gonna have key swipes, you know, or you have to sign a book to get into the building. You know who's ingressing and egressing from your premises when you have cameras and so on. But translate that into the cyber world, and in fact incorporate the physical with the cyber, because infiltration typically happens socially. So leverage some gaps physically to be able to get to the cyber assets where the crown jewels, the important data is held. And also for medium to larger businesses, make cybersecurity a key business function like you would finance or HR or marketing or even core technology, and if possible, separate it from technology, have it be like an inspection function, an audit function. Neil, Pat, anything you'd want to add to that?
No, I think you hit home. You hit the big one, which is know your crown jewels. Pat spoke about it earlier when she spoke about cybersecurity, insurance, auditing, being able to bring somebody to check your systems, no matter how big or small your business is. Pat also spoke about awareness training. Those are the ones that we really need to focus on.
Yep.
Okay, Pat, I have a question coming your way. You've spoken about the frameworks earlier, and which frameworks would you recommend? And we do have a complimentary question also coming into the general chat. What would be the costs of building such a framework if a business wanted to adopt any of the recommendations?
The frameworks have already been developed and they're out there. I don't think we have to build any of them. We just have to learn. We just have to learn how to implement them. And most of the frameworks that are tailor them, yeah. Most of the frameworks that are out there, most of them come with implementation guides. About 70% of what you need is available free. It's only if you're trying to get into using a tool to help you that you might have to pay for some of that. And some of these organizations have costing and that are geared towards developing countries. So, you know, we in Barbados will classify for special funding for some of these frameworks in terms of the implementation guidelines that come along with it. But the two frameworks that I mentioned there that I like a lot, and the Nist framework, I will just probably spend 2 minutes to go through the Nist framework, very high level. Nist framework have 5 components. The first component is identify. And the identify component really speaks to if you have to know what assets you have to protect them. So you have to know what data you have in your organization. You need to know what physical computer assets you have, your phones, your printers, your laptops, your servers. You need to know your assets. If you do not know what you have, you cannot protect it, right? So the first component speaks about identify. The second function is protect. Now, once you know what you have, you can start protecting it. And again, you have like there's a whole notion of defense in depth. Everything is not protected at the same way. You start by affording your most critical assets, which we call your crown jewels. George would have mentioned those. You start by protecting your crown jewels and affording it the most the highest level of protection, and then you get out onto the things that are not so important. So you have to come up then with a strategy of how you will protect, and that would include protecting your data against, you know, and you're looking at the confidentiality of your data, the integrity of your data, and the availability of your data. You also have to look at things like the sort of technologies that you would use to offer that protection. Now, as I said to you before, Sonia, you know, we are running behind the bad actors out there.
Mm-hmm.
So we can identify and we can protect, but we're not going to get to 100% protection, right? So some things are going to go wrong. Some things are going to go bump in the middle of the night. But you must have the capabilities and the functionalities that will help you to quickly identify and detect when something has gone wrong. And that is the third function within the Nist framework, having capabilities to allow you to detect when something has happened, when there's an intrusion within your environment. And once you are able to detect, you must be able then to respond. So if you detect that something is happening in your organization, how do you respond? What is your incident response protocols? Who gets involved? What do you do? Who do you call? That sort of thing. How do you respond to an intrusion? How do you respond to a breach? And you've identified your assets, you've protected them, you can detect when something is trying to get at them, and you respond to what you detect. And then the fifth and final component within the framework is recover. How do you recover? And it goes back to a comment that Neil made before. Back up. Because most of the time, if you got to recover, you probably would have to look to some way of bringing your data back online, bringing systems back online. And if you don't have some measure of disaster recovery planning, some measure that allows you to respond if there is a disruption, then you wouldn't be able to recover. So those are the 5 basic components of the Nist framework. And as I said before, the site that you can go onto is nist.gov. It is a U.S. site. The Nist framework comes from the Department of Commerce in the U.S. It is recognized internationally, as George had mentioned, as the de facto standard for managing cybersecurity. And it is available free of cost. There are lots of implementation guides around it. So, you can go and look to see what is there. The other one that I like as well is the Nist, is the CIS, which is the Center for Internet Security. They issue what they call 20 critical controls for cyber defense. And the controls are break into what they call basic controls. Then you have foundational controls, and you have organizational controls. And I will just mention some of the controls. I can't go through all 20. But the very first one on the list is inventory and control of hardware assets. You need to know what your hardware assets are. You need to know where they are, who have them, how they can plug into your network. The second one is inventory and control of your software assets. You have to know on any hardware device what software is allowed to run on there. And if you have if a machine is running a piece of software that is not on your whitelist, is not on your list of good software, then you must have something, you must be able to detect that piece of software is running, and then you must have something to kill that and isolate that machine, because that could be a malactor who infuse a piece of software in your environment and then trying to propagate across, do a lateral movement across your network to start gathering and harvesting information. Other controls that they have within the 20 are control of your wireless access control. Everybody loves wireless. Nobody likes wires anymore. But you need to control those wireless access points. And it is like, I see people, with their smartphones, and they go into Bridgetown or they go into a restaurant and it says free Wi-Fi. Everybody pick up their phone and they want to go on to free Wi-Fi. I don't, free Wi-Fi is free. So, you expose yourself to free Wi-Fi because you have no way of validating what you're connecting to. So I stay away very quickly from free Wi-Fi. But it talks about controlling your wireless access control points. It talks also about, included in the 20 controls, are application security, application software security. It talks about penetration testing and red team exercises. I mentioned that in discussions earlier on. So there are many things in there that, and I would suggest that you can go on to CIS.org. Just Google CIS 20 critical controls, and you will find they're there. They have implementation guidance, and it is a lot of free information that is out there. And certainly, I think if you're looking to implement one of those in your organization, you can do 50% of your work, or even maybe more than that, between 50 and 75%, depending on the size of your organization and the policies within your organization. You can do about 50 to 75% just based on free information that is available on the internet. And again, it's nist.gov. It is a American site, and CIS controls is also available.
Okay, you mentioned, and this one is going to Neil. Pat would have mentioned the incident response plan. Neil, could you go into more detail as to what that would look like? Something has happened, and then what?
So that's not where incident response plan starts. You sort of start to build from your beginning point is first identifying the assets you need to protect. When you have a business, you don't necessarily need to protect the mat at the door, the doorbell. Those aren't the things, right? You go first and you identify the assets that you need to make sure you protect. Once you've identified those assets, you build a team around those assets in terms of starting to create a response team and starting to flush out your plan. How do I protect them? What are the potential risks? What are the things that can happen to these particular assets or the crown jewels that can cause me to have to respond? You develop your plan, you make sure you document your plan, and once you've written your plan, you test it. That is very important. Now, before I said backup, but one of the other things you have to remember with backups is when you back up, you have to test that the backup is actually going to work. So when you do implement when you've written this plan and you identify your crown jewels, you say, this is how I'm going to respond, you actually have to put it through its paces. And only by putting it through its paces do you recognize, you know what, this may work, this may not work. I may have to adjust here, I may not have to adjust here. And don't be misguided. This is not only a technology thing, it's part of the business as well. You need to get your financial controller involved. You need to get your marketing people involved, because people tend to believe that technologists are the only people that know about what are the important things in the business. But at the end of the day, everybody that functions in a business has a different need at every different point in time. So you start by identifying your assets, you have conversations, you look at the risks. Once you found those risks, you document it, have your plan, test your plan.
So it doesn't start when an incident has happened.
No. It should be starting, for those who are listening and haven't done it yet, it should be starting when we come off of this chat here.
And I'm betting not only for businesses, the same way we have a family plan, and we live in a hurricane belt, we were in the hurricane season, we have a family plan for if the family is affected, where's going to be the meeting point. We have that plan done. Hopefully now everybody in your family knows what the family hurricane plan is. We need to do that for ourselves at home. I know some people think that the laptop is what we mean when we talk about technology. But as you've all said, and everybody who's in this space, even our children at home, walking around with very expensive pieces of technology. And all of that has to be documented both on a personal level, to including your insurances and so on, as well as for your business. Would you recommend that as well?
So you've just hit it on the head, right? So on the individual level, yes. We also need to have that plan in our house, because what happens when this phone that has in every possible phone number of every person that's important to you, it has in the shopping list for the supermarket, it has in the credit card information, it has in the doctor's number. What happens when this asset just drops and breaks, right? How do you recover? Have you actually been using the backup feature in it from Apple or whoever and actually backing up your phone that you can recover? And that's a reality of life, right? Most people, when that happens, the backup they have to restore is probably the one that they did when they first got the machine, the phone, and then you like lost half your life there, right? So the same way a business has to have a plan, a family and an individual has to have a plan.
Okay, this one is interesting. VPNs were mentioned before as one of the areas that we can beef up our own individual as well as our company security. What are your thoughts on the free VPN service providers? George, you want to talk about that one?
I must say I have used them in the past myself, but at this stage, you know, I would not use a free, you get what you pay for, right? I know that the freemium model uses advertising and a bunch of other ways to monetize, but also, you know, this is a serious thing. Just like you would invest in an alarm system for your house, for your car, burglar bars, and so on, I would spend some money and go for one of the more established VPN providers, which is like a $9.95 a month or something like that, rather than taking a freeware one.
So I was gonna save this statement for closer to the end, but you're gonna pay for it one way or another. So you can either pay for it now, where you have control over your purse string, or pay for it later when it's too much for you to handle.
So you get what you pay for is...
Agreed. You get what you pay for, yes.
Okay.
No free lunches.
Right, we had a question earlier about other pieces of hardware. Many of our homes are also connected. The Internet of Things is here. So we have our connected, everything has smart in front of it. So Alexa is in our homes, the ecosystems are in our homes. We have webcams that we can access from our personal devices and speakers. How can we protect ourselves from being hacked through those devices?
So Internet of Things is actually the second highest emerging cybersecurity threat. The second highest. And they're not things that are not rocket science that we can do. I think I saw somebody mention something about cameras. A
Yes,
device
that was
as
the question
simple
on.
as this little fella here, so you can put over your computer camera and have it closed off, so that when you are at home and you're using your computer and you're not using the video, you can have it shut off. Know the features of the things that you buy. Your TVs, those people who buy smart TVs, they're not called smart TVs for nothing. It means that something is going on in there. Something smart is going on. So get smarter than the TV and go and learn the features and learn how to turn off everything. You might mash out your TV for the first week or so and don't know how to get it to work, but eventually it can come back on. But you know, the Internet of Things is really a significant threat to us, right? I mean, the reality of somebody being able to come into your home and sit down and watch everything you're doing, Alexa, all these other little devices, we have to protect ourselves. And when we buy them, we just can't buy them, turn them on, and just leave them there. We have to understand there's a threat factor here, and we have to understand how to use them. When I'm at home and I'm literally in my home office and I'm doing work, I unplug that device. I don't want Amazon knowing what business I transacting during work time. It's for entertainment, and I use it at entertainment time. We have to really pay attention to the instructions, which is something the general human being don't do. We don't read instructions. We just turn it on and run with the ball, right? But in the case of Internet of Things, we have to read the instructions.
And it's all the non-tech devices. So we take for example, we take for granted that our phones would be connected to the internet. But it's difficult to buy, as you said, a TV now that doesn't have smart in the label, which means it's going to be connected. And more than likely, those are going to come enabled. You do have to consider anything you bring in your home that connects to a network, a potential threat. It's a potential access point to your home. And in the same way, you wouldn't leave your front door open. You have to think of the things that you bring in. Samsung 2 years ago, when they brought out the refrigerator that you could stay and it's selling on island, you could go to Massey and call your fridge so you can see, did you forget milk? Because there are cameras in the fridge that you're dialing into your fridge to see what's in your fridge. That means it's a connected device and therefore a possible threat.
Anything that asks you for a Wi-Fi password, you gotta watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And I like what you had said earlier. We don't pay enough attention to SSIDs. So when you say, everybody sees my name here, Sonia Mahan's house as my SSID, I really just opened myself for anybody passing to see that that's my network. And I just want to bring up another question. The use of social media, you had spoken, I think it was Pat that had spoken about this earlier. We live our lives on social media, so we tell not only the hackers, but we tell the burglars, the physical burglars, when we are not going to be home because we're so excited to be going on holiday, and we splash it over every social media platform. I am gone, well, not now in COVID, but I'm gone for 3 weeks, which means your house is empty for 3 weeks. And you have just let the whole world know that. So just taking more precautions, just like you would, like George said, in the physical world, we need to take in the cyber non-physical world as well. There is another question here. How important is training and awareness? I think you addressed this, but I just want to bring that out again. Somebody asked, how important is training and awareness?
If you don't know it, you can't protect yourself from it, right? So whether you're an individual, a business owner, an employee, a developer, a software developer, because I mean, when you're writing software, and Sonia, you have software development roots, I know you. So when you're writing software, you don't want to be thinking testing and risk management. You want to be solving the cool problem and creating the app and potentially selling it or just enjoying your works, right? But you have to take time to understand, and you have to edify yourself as you create. When you're a consumer, and going back to the nano businesses, because for me, my message is really to the everyman and the every person, right? You go and you get an app because you want to sell whatever your service online or on a website. Well, make sure that that app password protected, how it's connected to the internet, all those things. That's the awareness we're talking about. We're not necessarily saying to go sit down in a classroom, but making yourself aware within your particular life disposition is just a few clicks on Google away. But there's another point I want to, and that's for that question. But Neil raised the point about Amazon and Google knowing. I'm sure everyone on this webinar has had instances where you've had a discussion with somebody about something. You didn't write it down, you didn't Google it, you spoke about it. Then you went to your Gmail or something, you saw ads popping up. So that's all you need to know, right? These things, they're tracking your location. So unless I'm using Google Maps or something, or Waze, I tend to turn off my location. I'm a very paranoid person. I do not talk too much online, if at all, right? And I mean, that's not everybody. I am not advocating mass paranoia like me. You don't have to be crazy like me, but watch what you do, what you say, and how you conduct yourself. You don't have to put your whole life story out for the world to see, because there are people like us, but on the other side, who will study you, know you, and then exploit you. And then, and as we look into the future, there are going to be, or maybe they are right now, Pat and Neil, you know better than me because you're on the edge. There'll be algorithms that will do that, not just people. In fact, if you look at 2016, what happened in the US, it is purported that the algorithms, they gathered the data and then started messaging particular demographics in a way that would nudge them to behave a certain way. So it's there already, right? But it's going to be even more commonplace. It's going to go from big chunks of data, male, middle class, particular racial orientation, a particular earning level, to Sonia Mahon, right? It's going to come down to the individual. I am learning you, and I'm going to sort you out. You think you're guarding against me? Okay, you didn't take that phishing mail. That's a distraction. I know how you're going to behave, so I can hit you some other way, right? Those are the things you have to be mindful of. So folks, be very careful of what you put out there, and keep making yourself edified on what the risks are.
I have a couple of questions coming together. So I lump them all into one heading. COVID-19 impact on cybersecurity. That's my heading. How has COVID?
So it all started with Zoom. Right? Everybody jumped on the Zoom bandwagon. But I think this COVID-19 situation has changed companies in a different way, right? This is how we have to interact with people now on a regular. We can't go to their offices. We can't go and have meetings in boardrooms and have those types of discussions. So COVID-19 changed us significantly on a technological scale in terms of communication, in terms of working from home, in terms of Zoom. And after Zoom came out and everybody's data was all over the internet, they started themselves out, right? They hired professionals and said, hey, COVID isn't going away and everybody needs to use this platform. We need to clean up our app. And they did it. And they cleaned it. We're on Zoom right now. So that should tell you something, right? So in the olden days, when a company did something wrong, it was like, no, you are banished to the furthest corner of the world, and we don't want to see you ever again. But these guys recovered. This is the way of the world right now, until somebody finds something they can stick into you and work out that you don't have COVID anymore. this is how we're going to be communicating. This is how we're going to be talking. We've sort of had the practice earlier with social media, but this is it for us: collaboration and collaborative tools.
The other thing that would have happened from a COVID perspective and large an organization, people working from home, when persons start working from home, you have just extended your network perimeter. It's no longer within the four walls. Well, it's no longer within the four walls for some companies. It is now in people's homes. And so you have to have a measure of control there. You have to be able still to protect your data. So how do you still enforce your data protection and controls that you would have had in the office? And so there were a number of things that you can do in terms of, like, you restrict persons connecting, because everybody want to print at home. So you restrict people's ability in terms of what they can print at home, or if they can print at home. So you would have to beef up your endpoint security. Another thing as well is, because you now would have most persons having their laptops and in some cases desktops at home for a longer period of time, you have to afford those desktops and those laptops protection. So if you didn't have it, you would have made sure that your hard drive were encrypted. So the information or data that is stored on hard drive cannot be accessed unless the individual who has the trust of using that particular device has logged into that device. You should have locked off most of your USB ports to avoid exfiltration of data that way. So you had to think of different ways in terms of how you will protect your data. And then you had your connectivity. How are you going to connect? How are you going to allow staff to connect back into the network to continue doing their work? So you obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but you would have had to look at some sort of multi-factor authentication, because a password and a user ID would not be sufficient in this environment, because we know in this environment there are a number of malactors who are just trolling around, looking around for things that they can exploit. So you wouldn't be having a single sign-on. You would not be having a single factor for authentication. You would want to make sure that your staff are authenticating using some sort of multi-factor authentication. So I guess, and you also would have to have increased your monitoring capabilities, looking for any sort of lateral movement of unusual activity across the network, because with all the good intentions, something might slip up and somebody may be able to get something onto the desktop that can then move laterally across the organization. And depending on the organization, you might want to have to restrict persons' access to the internet from their work devices. And I say restrict in a way as not that they can't go, but if they want to go onto the internet, they have to log on first to the corporate network and then get the access to the internet via the corporate network, as opposed to getting the access to the internet directly from their home Wi-Fi. Because if you allow access directly from the home Wi-Fi, you have opened up yourself for another avenue for attack vectors to enter your environment. So you restrict that. So you can't get onto the network unless you go through the corporate Wi-Fi, which will be via the VPN using multi-factor authentication. So those are some of the things that one would have to make sure is in place now in this time with the large scale of persons working from home.
Okay, we are coming to the end of this webinar, so I want to ask two final questions, and then I'm going to ask each of you to give your 2-minute wrap up. How does a company know that it has been compromised?
That depends. I mean, you would have heard Neil spoke earlier on about different types of actors, and you're knowing that you have some compromise. What are the indicators of compromise? Will depend on the motivation of the particular person who have compromised your environment. If the person is a hacktivist and they just want to bring attention to their cause, they might deface your network. They might deface your web page. So you might open your web page and you may see. I think somebody had this. Recently, marijuana is a health something. I can't remember what the exact thing it said, but it was an activist who was talking, who wanted to free up marijuana usage, right? So you might see a defacing of web pages. If it is a scenario where a person is a hardcore criminal and they're looking to steal information, you're probably not going to know that they're there, because they're there to steal, and if they're there to steal the information, they want to be under the radar. So you probably won't recognize that unless you have a very strong network security defense mechanism where it looks for unusual behavior, where you're using some level of artificial intelligence and behavior analysis on your endpoint. So you can say this endpoint is behaving unusual. And then you can start digging and investigating, doing some sort of forensics to see why the machine is behaving that way. Then you may be able to discover that somebody was in your network harvesting information. So it really depends on the reason why the motivation of the actor. But I've said all of that, and one thing that you must remember, because there's so many different motivations that the indicators of compromise are going to be different depending on the person's motivation, you have to have a strong cybersecurity program. Because if you have a strong program, it's going to be looking for all those various indicators of compromise. So you can see when things are acting strange. At the top of the house really is a measure of network monitoring that have a level of behavioral analysis embedded in it. So it learns the behaviors of your network components, and it can indicate when a particular component in your network is behaving in an abnormal way, which would tend to indicate that there's some foreign body within the environment. Neil?
So for smaller businesses as well, they have to monitor. It can't be web page and you never look at it ever again. You have to be monitoring those digital artifacts that say that you are who you are.
Yes, monitoring is like, you must always monitor, and the monitoring is 24/7. It is not monitor for half an hour today and then half an hour next week. It's 24/7 monitoring. Small businesses, that could be a challenge, but that would be the topic of another discussion, because we can go off tangent on how small businesses can really form cooperatives to allow them to really combat the whole issue of cybersecurity, but that would be another discussion.
But I would say that, what I would say is, for any medium to large business that does not have a cybersecurity program, risk management in place today, just assume that you've been infiltrated. Maybe they haven't taken anything, maybe it's just come and taken a look and gone, or maybe they're just waiting, they're collecting something and waiting for the right time when it reaches critical mass to exfiltrate it, right? Maybe data, whatever. But I think any business that is successful today financially or visible that does not have a cybersecurity program in place and they're connected to some public network, for me, it would be safe to assume someone has come in at some point in time. So I think you start from there and then start putting your risk management practices in place.
So I just add to that one. Sorry, Sonia. I just add to that one. You have to look at your internal staff as well, right? Because there's that guy who's ready to leave your organization and go somewhere else, and he's going to take your crown jewels with him if you don't watch yourself. And as George said, the external threat actor hasn't shown his hand because he's just waiting patiently for the optimum time to use what he has. He's sitting there waiting, just waiting to exhale. We all know that term, right? So you have to make sure you've protected yourself.
And I'll give a real personal example. Back in between 97 and 98, I was head of R&D at Monster.com, which was a big .com at the time. I left, I went to a consulting firm. After 2 years later, I had root access to their production servers. I would just go and say, do I still have it? I didn't obviously didn't do anything, but I just went to see I could still log on.
Yes, sure.
The statute of limitations are up, but that's just to show you, as Neil said, persons leaving the organization, you must have a good exit, a clean exit separation, not just financial and HR wise, but from a technical cybersecurity perspective. Because if 20-something years ago, it took 2 years and an upgrade and a total change of technology and platform for me to lose access, I mean, think of what would happen today.
And then when we think of the number of large breaches that made the international news, a lot of them would have been breached when they start looking back at the indicators. A lot of them would have been breached for years before they knew it. I mean, like most of us on the call would have heard about the Target breach. Those persons who would have breached Target was in Target for like 2 years, two plus years before they were discovered. So it is not far-fetched, in the thinking, because if people are there to steal information, they don't want to be found. And some of them can morph into, they can change their behavior, their patterns. They can, change how they behave on the system when they think they are being discovered. They can change that way. So it's very critical that we have monitoring.
Okay, Neil, this last one is for you. You talked about backup, and then backup again. What about any considerations or concerns with cloud storage and cybersecurity, where most of us are backing up to the cloud? Should there be any recommendations there? Should we be concerned?
Well, I'd say if you're a business, your concern would have to be where your data is being stored. So if you're using a cloud provider, for example, who's in the Ukraine or in the US, and you don't want your information in one of those 2 U places, then you don't use their services. A lot of services let you know the options of where you can have your data stored from a business perspective. From an individual perspective, again, you get what you pay for. So if you want the free service, you take it, but you use it. If you don't want the free service, you pay for that cloud storage in a location that is very accessible. There is no company out there who has 100% secure system. So we're not going to fool anyone here after this to say, go to Google and your data will be safe with them. I'm not going to tell anyone that. What I'll tell you is make sure that you have multiple options, because you want to make sure that day you want your data, wherever you're getting it from, be it the cloud, be it a backup tape, be it a USB drive, be it the computer next to your computer that you copied everything over, that you have access to the data.
Okay. We still have several questions in the chat, but we are coming to the close of the program, and I want you each to give one takeaway. We had, at our highest point, we had about 85 persons in on this call. And Pat, I'm going to begin with you. One takeaway from today's session.
I think for me, it is recognizing that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. It is not only the responsibility, if you're in a company, it's not only the responsibility of technology, it is across all departments. And you must maintain your level of awareness. Things are constantly changing daily, and you can only protect yourself and your organization if you are aware.
Neil?
So mine is simple. Backup.
I don't think you mentioned that before, Neil.
Yeah, well, okay, well, sorry. Test it and then back up again.
And George?
The same way you protect yourself in the material world, protect yourself in the virtual world / cyberspace. Don't take anything for granted.
Well,
don't be naked.
Don't be naked. Don't be naked. Back up and know that we all share responsibility in this new space. We are all willingly, as I said at the beginning, willingly or unwillingly catapulted by COVID-19, but we were going to get here eventually. Just many of us got here much quicker than we anticipated. And what we thought was impossible 3 months ago is now becoming routine in this digital space, and we are never going to go back to a pre-COVID existence. Many of the things that we had to do to adapt to being in a digital world, we are going to keep, either because of efficiency or expediency, or because it works better. So know that we are going to be in this space. I just want to wrap up with 2 things. One, as a parent, I'm a parent of 3, and we handed our daughters the most dangerous device that they could possibly have. and that's a cell phone. And just the same way we would not have given them access to the car, just giving them the car keys and say, go hit the road, they're not at the stage yet, but they would have had to go through training and awareness and sensitization and testing to make sure that they could drive the car. It's the same thing. I want each of us as parents or your guardians, or a young person with a cell phone, that training and awareness has to ripple down to that level. And if it's not a cell phone, if it's a connected device, whether it's a leapfrog device or any of I don't remember the other ones that I was so into many years ago. If your child, goddaughter, godson, if you're a guardian, if there's a young person in your house with a connected device, they must have training as to how to use that well, and you must have rules and regulations the same way your company has for you. You have to govern the use of that device. That's me on my soapbox. And with that, I'm going to thank our panelists for coming in this evening. And I'm going to just share my screen for just a moment. Let me show you this slide. We spoke about CP, this is with the auspices of the CPDLL, and these are some of the short courses that we do have. Do note that we have Introduction to Cybersecurity, and that course is coming up July 6th to early September. We will get that dates to you. I had the dates in front of me, but I'm not seeing it right. July 6th to September 2nd. And you can go on to our website, kphil.ue.edu, lifelong learning. But we'll also send this information out to you in an email to give us, so that you can provide us with feedback on this particular seminar, and we'll give you more information where that is concerned. There are some questions that were not answered, and I'm going to ask the panelists we're going to feed some of those questions that weren't answered, and we may send it out in a fact sheet to you as well. Now, for those, there was one particular question that I want to get back to for you, Neil, and George, and Pat. I just want to stop the share. Right, Pat, that came in. It was the first question, even before Pat was finished her opening remarks. What do I do to become a cybersecurity specialist? How do I start? What training should I get? And we're going to end on that question. Pat, Neil, I love the mask that you've put on. That really exemplifies what we were talking about here today.
You wanted me to respond to that question, Sonia?
Yes, Patricia and George.
All right.
Neil is in his mask at the moment, so I don't know if I can trust anything Neil says.
No, we're not even quite sure it's Neil, actually. In terms of, in terms of getting into cybersecurity, I think the most important thing is you must have a very strong, inquisitive mind, a mind that is willing to question and not willing to accept anything you see in front of you. You must be able to have strong analytic skills and be able to dig into stuff and reasoning, logic. So I would have before, if you had asked me this maybe last year before, I would have said to you, you needed to have a degree in computer science and maybe a degree in cybersecurity. There are lots of training in cybersecurity that is available that can advance a person who have the right thinking ability and the right mindset. And I say that from a position of experience now. I have a very I don't want to say I have a young girl who came on working with us in cybersecurity maybe 2 years now, and her degree is in law and history, but she's an excellent cybersecurity person. She would have done, after she came in with us, she would have done training in cybersecurity. And but her mind, she's inquisitive. She is very analytical. So it's more of a particular mindset and a particular disposition, more so than your basic underlying training. So that is my take on that. Neil, what do you think?
Well, you should probably start by doing the Introduction to Cybersecurity course being offered by University of West Indies.
That is true. I like that. Amen. Good.
But like Pat really hit it on the head, right? I remember when I first went to university and I was doing computer science, I was like, I do not want to be a programmer. This is not going to be my life, right? Unfortunately, at that time, there wasn't other programs. There wasn't anything about networking. There wasn't anything about cybersecurity. There weren't those other opportunities, but there's a lot out there right now. But as Pat said, have a grounding. You have to do something that forces you to think outside of the box, that forces you to be inquisitive, that forces you to want to know, why is this happening? Is this supposed to be happening this way? You don't want a person who just comes to work and ticks the box. I'm at work, had a great day, goodbye. No, you want somebody who's saying, why is this computer doing this all the time when I pass here? Why? You want that person with a why mentality, because that's the person that's gonna dig, and they're gonna find. So I agree with Pat. You don't have to necessarily have a computer science degree, but you should have a grounding. But there are lots of programs and courses out there that once you've started to get into the area, there's ISACA, there's ISC Square with CISSP, which I'm going to push because that's my big thing. There are lots of programs that you can do. Get the foundation. So the introduction course that UE is going to put on, understand, because sometimes people want to do something and it may be the flavor of the month. So make sure that this is what you want to do. Don't go and invest in a whole degree in something and then say, yeah, no, this is not what I want. Right? So come out and do the introduction course and make sure that this is the line you want to be in. And then there are lots of opportunities. There are lots of programs that you can get involved in, but you also need to make sure you get experience. So it's not only about the document and about the training. You have to practice. So SANS, for example, has a lot of hacker challenge training that they do, some things for free. Those red team things that Pat was talking about, go capture the flag. That there are lots of different things you can go on the internet and experiment and try. Not break into anybody's network, by the way, but go and try some stuff. Go and be inquisitive. So that when you actually get that position or you apply for that job and you're sitting down in front of Pat or a judge and they're asking you a question, you can talk about things that you understand and not just say, well, I read the book. That's not going to cut it.
And George, the last minute to you.
Okay, so endorsing everything that fellow panelists said, this introductory course will allow you to determine your journey if you want to take the journey. So there are many different aspects of cybersecurity, whether you have a law degree, an accounting degree, computer science, engineering, medicine, whatever. When you take this course, it's going to give you a personal benchmark or baseline. Number one, is this really what I want to do? You're going to figure that out during the course of this course. And then based on where I am, you'll be able to quantify specifically where you are. And from there, we'll help you, we'll advise you as you reach out to us and so on in the course, which pathway to take. If you want to go the network engineering path, well, there's a background to that. If you want to go in the pure risk management path, and you come from a legal background or a finance background, there's a path there. And if you are an administrator, an executive, a politician, right, a regulator, there's a particular path that you would take as well. So this course, if you're in the military, obviously there's a path from there as well. So we look forward to seeing a lot of you in the course and helping you on your respective journeys as together we work towards helping secure our country as we make this digital transformation.
Just one final question. Do we know the format of the course right now? Are we online? Are we going to do blended?
Online, like this.
Online like this. So access, no matter where you are in the world, you can come on to do that course. And again, as a follow-up to this session, we're going to send the email for your feedback and we'll include information about the upcoming courses, including the Intro to Cybersecurity course starting a couple of weeks on July 6th. So again, I just want to thank all of you. Thank you so much to the panelists. Like I said, The audience, you have been engaging. You have been asking some great questions, some great comments coming through on the chat. And we look forward to seeing you in our Intro to Cybersecurity course on July 6th. It won't be the last time we offer it, but given the relevance of everything going on, you want to be included in this inaugural offering of the course. So again, thank you from UWI, the CPDLL here at Cave Hill. Thank you to the panelists, and everyone, have a great night.